illegal immigrants are bringing crime, drugs, they're rapists, and I assume some are good people. This is a quotation from President Trump's 2015 campaign speech. The truth is, however, majority of undocumented immigrants are actually making our country stronger. Good morning, everyone. I'm here today to tell you why undocumented immigrants should be allowed to stay here in the United States as opposed to being deported back to their home countries. Now, I'm going to be doing this by first talking about the sacrifices and contributions undocumented immigrants have made during this COVID-19 pandemic. I'm then going to be talking about some issues with our current immigration policies, primarily talking about the separation of families and the psychological effects that has on the children. Lastly, I will be discussing some solutions to some issues in our immigration policies. Now, as we all know, we've been living in this COVID-19 pandemic for a very long time now, the past 9 months. And it's really been an adjustment for all of us. We've all had to learn to, do work from home, do school from home, do really anything, primarily from home. Throughout this pandemic, we've heard the term essential worker. Now, essential workers are people that, have to do jobs that, we need for our livelihood. And according to the United League of Latin American Citizens, 80% of workers in the meat industry are undocumented immigrants. So the reason I'm bringing this up is, think about it. 80% of all meat workers in the United States are undocumented immigrants. So when you go to the butcher shop or when you go to the grocery store to get some meat, chances are it's on the shelves, it's in the butcher shops because of the work undocumented immigrants put in. So if we were to deport all of them or a significant amount back to their home countries, it will literally affect majority of our livelihoods, right? Because we won't have any meat on the shelf. We won't have any meat in the butcher shops. The other interesting thing to look at here is that according to the U.S. Agricultural Department, half of all farmer employees are undocumented immigrants, right? So when you go to the grocery store and you see produce, you see fruits and vegetables on the shelves, again, chances are it's due to the work that undocumented immigrants put in on the farms. And if we were to deport all of them, again, this will affect our livelihood, and especially in a time where, any, change in who's doing the work and all this will really affect our livelihoods, and our economy is already shot, and it'll be worse than it already is right now. And I know what some of you in the audience may be thinking at this very moment. Oh, well, if we just deport all the undocumented immigrants or a significant amount of them, there's more jobs for Americans. False. According to a Pew Research article that was published in June of 2020 stated that 77% of Americans wouldn't be interested in doing jobs that undocumented immigrants do. That being said, that basically means Americans are, way too overqualified. They're not going to do it. So again, if we were to deport all these people, our economy would be shot, and we would have huge problems, and we'd have a lot of jobs that were previously filled by undocumented immigrants vacated. All right, now moving on to the separation of families. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Oh, I've seen it a million times on the news. I've seen, kids being in cages and all this. And although that is all very unfortunate and very sad, I'm primarily going to be focusing on the psychological aspects of the children of undocumented immigrants that are deported. So, according to an EBSCO-Host article published in March of 2019 stated that there are an estimated 4.1 million undocumented immigrants here in the United States that have citizen-born children. Now, what that means is that their children were born here in the United States, making them U.S. citizens, but their parents are undocumented. So, typically what happens when a parent gets deported and their child is left alone here in the States, they are more likely actually to engage in criminal-like behavior. The reason I'm even bringing this up is because, think about it, if they rebel because their parents left and engage in criminal-like behaviors, this can lead them to going down, a life of crime, being involved in organized crime from a young age, and them going to prison. And we've already have a huge, I'm sure we all know here, a huge overpopulation problem in prisons And that would just be contributing to that. Whereas if their parents were allowed to stay here in the United States, where they were more likely to, be giving a better life for their kid and escaping violence back in their home country, they can maybe, not get involved in life of crime and, become something and actually give back to society as opposed to, going to prison. Now, at this point, I'm sure, maybe some of you in the audience out there might be thinking, oh, well, what if the parent was most likely a criminal? I'm sure when we hear stories of deportation and watch the news, we may associate that with, they're probably involved in crime or some sort of crime, or did something wrong, right? That's actually not entirely true. According to an EBSCO article that was published in January of 2019 stated that there are 439,000 undocumented immigrants who were deported, right? Of those 439,000, more than half were deported on non-criminal charges. So just think about that for a second. More than half weren't even criminals. And the probability that they were here creating a better lives for themselves and their family is very high, and escaping violence, they weren't doing anything. So the fact that they were penalized for doing that is just mind-boggling, to me at least. And lastly, we've talked about, all the different, reasons why undocumented immigrants should be allowed to stay here in the United States. Now you might be wondering, what are some solutions? What can be done to make this happen, right? So what we need to do is the government needs to create a tiered system. And what I mean by that is that according to a Cato Institute article published in April 2019, it stated that if we have a tier system where undocumented immigrants they can pay a little bit money over a short period of time, and it'll make them documented. That way they can work and live here without having the fear of being, deported back to their home country. Or they can pay a bigger amount of money over a longer period of time, and this route would actually guarantee them a pathway to citizenship one day. So they'd be like full written citizens, and this would be a very good option for, like we talked about earlier, people who have citizen-born children. So that way they can just be citizens here and they don't have to worry about renewing their immigration status, right? Also, another thing is we need to also fund and support nonprofits such as the Immigration Justice Campaign. According to their website, detained immigrants are actually 10 times more likely to beat their case when they have a lawyer representing them. However, only 10% of detained immigrants have lawyers with them at their trials. So donating to these organizations and getting the funds they need to hire more lawyers to help these people is very important. Now, in conclusion, we discussed sacrifices and contributions undocumented immigrants have made during this COVID-19 pandemic. We've talked about how the negative psychological effects of children when their parents are deported. And we talked about some solutions. And honestly, I think that we need to create an environment for undocumented immigrants who do so much for our country so that they feel safe here and they don't need to worry about being deported. Thank you.